modern mastering and remastering are killing the music. Yes, this is what is happening. If we don't take action, it's going to get worse and worse. Are you ready to know what we can do and what are the issues? Let's jump in. Okay guys, we're going to take a look at what is mastering, what are the problems, what is remastering, what are the problems, and a few possible solutions that I would like to share with you. So let's start immediately with the mastering. Now, first of all, though, I do want to underline the fact that I did pretty recently a video on how is so depressing the current music production. And there you're going to find some topics strictly related to this video. So take a look. Here's a link. You're going to find all the links, obviously, like always, in the video description. So, mastering. When we are talking about a master doing a master for an album, for a record, okay? Whatever it is. In fact, there are two main purposes to do a master. Well, clearly, first of all, it's the natural process coming after the recording and mixing process. You have the multi-track mix, and at that point, you're going to have to correct, equalize, do some processing, just fix the overall multi-track in a two-track if it's stereo or mono, or multi-track if it's a multi-channel release. It depends, clearly, the best way possible for that engineer, obviously. Because the problem is not the engineer, as we will see in a while. It's whom is behind them. In any case, that is one of the main purposes of mastering. Obviously, strictly connected to this, the second main purpose, because sometimes maybe you don't have to retouch anything, you just have to do a new version of your master. Because when you do a master, clearly, you're doing a master for a specific format. You're doing a master, if you're doing things correctly, for your record, for your vinyl. You're doing a master for your CD. You're doing a master for your tape, your cassette, for your streaming services, for everything that is possible. It needs a proper master. Sometimes they're only going to change a few things, sometimes nothing. That's one of the worst case scenarios, but that's what is happening. And instead, in several correctly done and careful productions, you do have a specific master for each format. But the problem is still going to be there, and we're going to see in a while. Okay, these are the main purposes of mastering. Let's proceed. What are the main problems that we are finding here? I just want to mention a video I did a few months ago where I kind of in a provocative way entitled it, CD, the best format of the world. As soon as you open the video, here is a link. Once again, the links are here below also. I declared it could have been. Meaning that the mastering is always our main problem. Especially, I would say, with digital. Because when mastering engineers approach analog formats, in this case we are mainly talking clearly about vinyl records, there are a few solutions that somehow softens a little bit the result. It's not so harsh, it's not so bad, but in any case it is rare in the end, because mainstream is also going on vinyl and they don't care too much to fancy things up. They're being told to do that, okay? Because I do want to defend mastering engineers. They know how to do things. Not everyone, clearly, but a lot of people know perfectly what's going on, and they are not responsible of the main issues, which were clearly the compression, meaning the loudness war. There's dozens of videos and articles on this. When you compress a specific track to reduce the peaks, to have a homogeneous output, you're clearly reducing those and loud sounds, which make music more realistic. Clearly, this is happening mainly in pop, rock, electronic music, okay? We must admit that for jazz and classical music, the various masters do have some tolerance, are more dynamic, in some cases very dynamic. We just have to think about movies, and you perfectly understand that if we want, we can be incredibly dynamic. All movies that you have, even in the worst streaming service, is incredibly dynamic. In fact, you're probably reaching for your remote control to lower the volume or higher it several times during a movie, especially if you have a kid sleeping around or your grandma or whatever it is, because it's incredibly dynamic there. You need those little very quiet voices and those big loud booming voices if you're watching an adventure or action movie. It's normal. So we can perfectly do that, and we have the capability with digital to have a huge, mastodontic, infinite dynamic range, much more on paper than analog media. But we never do that. We don't take advantage of that, unfortunately. We compress. As I said in that video on the music, sometimes you want compression for an effect, especially electronic, pop. That's okay. You want that compression. You don't want things too dynamic or too refined. That is perfectly reasonable. But unfortunately, we are forgetting what is a dynamic rock album, for example, which doesn't mean loud, once again. It means dynamic, that you have differences, and that influences also how the instruments sound, obviously. The details. In any case, I don't want to go too much in depth for this. I said even too much. So, once again, the first number one issue in mastering, I would say mainly in digital, is the compression, known also to the wide public as loudness war, because the more they compress, the louder it is. Second point, over-processing. Now, I did a video based on an interview done to Bert Grudman, where he talks about the digital disease. Very fascinating. I'm not going to go in depth there. Take a look. Here is a link. Also, below, you're going to find a link to that video. I would take a look at it because it makes you understand a little bit more what's happening. It's not an analog versus digital war. No, it's just to analyze what is taking place, mainly in digital, the problems. And this is one of the issues I highlighted in that video, and I want to highlight here, the over-processing. Even when I went to that mastering facility in Bologna, I did a video also there where I took a tour. It's all in Italian, but it was fun. It was one of the main facilities in Italy. Here is a link. I'm about to finish the links. I know that. You have only 5 on YouTube. And there, people knew perfectly what they were doing, but in some cases, they just started to chat. They knew some people that were just passing hours, if not days, on a single track to tweak every little thing, because it's almost like a masturbation. I'm sorry to say this, yes, but because you want to make that special sound, you know how to do that. You want to give your special imprint. Everything, little thing has to be perfectly in line. You have this, okay? Not everyone, obviously. Actually, a lot of people want to go quickly and pass to the next job. But I do want to say this. There's an over-processing. Too much EQ, too much plugins. That's one of the most terrible things you can do to digital. I know they're useful, but they do change and degrade the sound. So, and then there's the constant conversion back to analog, then digital, analog, digital. Not everyone, once again, but a lot of people do this because when you have that conversion in an analog domain, sometimes you need that for a more euphonic type of result. Then you have to put it back to digital. Then you have to sum it again, once again in analog. Not everyone does that. But it's just to say, there are so many processes. I can't go through all of them. I don't even know all of them. But as you can imagine, usually in the past, you would have a gear for a compressor. Now, most likely, you're going to have a plugin to do that. Just software. So that is degrading the digital mainly signal, okay? That is one of the main problems. Then the last problem is that if we think about it, turning back to mastering, to the purpose of mastering, the main goal, the main objective when you're cutting ends in the mastering, you're not doing anything fancy. The main master, what engineers have in mind obviously and reasonably, is reasonably because that's the reality, that's the truth that we are living, is that the mastering is for Spotify, is for phones, okay? Phones, that's the main reason. It has to boom out of those little crappy little things underneath your smartphone with a bad compressed streaming service, probably Spotify, but not only. I mean, so if you put these things all together, and there's much more, but these are the worst, clearly mastering is truly killing music of all genres. Mainly, as I said, pop, rock, or things away from jazz, classical, chamber music, those type are a little more better realized, fortunately, at least that. Okay, let's proceed. Let's talk now of the second part of this video, remastering. Now, I'm sure that a lot of people out there are puzzled from this remastering everywhere. I remember even when I was a kid, every now and then, after a few years, you found a CD, remastered version. Oh, must be something better. Remastered. Everything was remastered. Now, it is true that we have two main purposes there that may make sense, but we're going to see how labels are playing on these. Okay, let's start with the main purposes. First, remastering for a new format. Because, in fact, when the CD came along, all of a sudden, towards the end of the 80s and mainly the beginning of the 90s, when I was around, that's why I saw so many remastering issues, releases, there was a transfer. They needed to do a transfer because they had in their vaults masters for vinyl. We tend to forget that. Master tapes, the old ones, are ready for producing vinyl records. And what you have on those tapes is not good. It's not optimized for a CD, for example, and even worse for streaming things or files or whatever it is. So clearly, you have to take the mix if you're a good boy. Otherwise, a lot of times they just take the master and remaster the master. Unfortunately, that's what happens, degrading everything once again. Because you're manipulating, you have to process it again. It's not going to be better. And the second purpose should be sometimes, and that's where we're falling in the marketing trap, to enhance, to clean up, to make a better version of an album. Yes, of course. Sometimes you're doing that clearly for selling. I mean, the whole industry is for selling. It's not for charity, that's for sure. But sometimes, you have to ask yourself, do we really need another version? Every few years, in the beginning, it was reasonable to have a new version. You had to enhance a few things. You had to clean up. You have new technology. You have new type of gear. You have new converters. Things can be better, actually. Yes, that is where a remaster does make sense. Okay? Absolutely. But unfortunately, people were playing on casual buyers like I was, where you don't know not even what remaster means. It just seems fancy and cool. Plus, every time, because you have to update it to what's going around on the radio, now mainly on streaming and things like that, television, whatever it is, YouTube itself, unfortunately, you have to make it louder. So you're going to have to compress it. There's a famous image, if I find it, I'll put it here, of poor Michael Jackson. We're starting from the 80s, not even the 60s or 70s, from the 80s up until now. You can see that the nice waves, the peaks and valleys just disappear with a nice flat brick wall of sound, when clearly it sounds like crap. So that's one of the dark sides, really, of remastering, and that is why it's also killing music. Let's proceed. Okay, I was supposed to say a bit of the problems. I forgot, but I already did say something. Well, as we said, more compression through the years, through the versions, more loudness war. What else? That sometimes you're doing these remasters starting from a CD, not even from the tapes, if we're talking about analog tape. And most recordings of our human history is on tape. Let's remember that. What else? I wrote here a few notes. Clearly, when you are remastering, you're also wearing those tapes, those mixes or masters. So that's also something you must take into consideration, an issue of this process. Plus, there is one huge problem correlated to remastering: copyright. A lot of times in the past, now there's a new law starting from 2018, but up until then, you could do a nice little remaster to continue the copyright of the label, not of the poor artist. Plus, we had some issues, especially in the US, because there is a law where practically you have a federal law all the way up to, actually after 1972, okay? There is a common regulation. The recordings before 1972 are not protected by that. Hence, every state has its own rules, and you can go around those things easily. So that was also a big problem in the US, and it still is actually, even though there are some new laws now that are coming out. Also this one on copyrights, where you cannot use remasterings, derivates, that's how they call them, to kick ahead your copyright. But unfortunately, what they have done until 2018 can last 70 years, or in other parts of the world, 50 years. Copyrights goes 50 to 70 years. Can you imagine that? Just doing a simple remaster, just changing a few little things. It's not so, I'm not being extremely detailed in this discussion. It's very complicated. But I did want to highlight these problems connected also to the copyright, unfortunately, because they were using, once again, I want to say this, underline it, that a lot of labels have been doing a remastering, not only to sell them to you guys, to me, to everyone, but also to kick ahead the copyright and keep the rights for themselves, to exploit the damn record until, I don't know, even your nephews can. It's insane. Fortunately, in 2018, a little late, this has changed in the US. I'm talking about the US mainly because that's the main market, as you can imagine. And I'm sure you're thinking about Taylor Swift, that she re-recorded her stuff. She re-recorded. She didn't do a new master. She done the whole thing from scratch to be completely independent. Chapeau to her. That was something really cool. Good job, girl. But clearly you're not it's not those original recordings. Something is going to change. But apart from that, that was a good move to really to shake these darn labels, because sometimes they really take advantage of the artists. It's simply something just not unfair, and hopefully things will change in better in the following years. I don't think so. Okay, so let's take a look at some possible solutions I have imagined. Nothing fancy, nothing special. Let's collaborate on this, okay? Write in your comments possible solutions. I'm sure people are gonna read this. It's important. You never know. So I was thinking from a selfish point of view, okay? An audiophile view, talking about mastering. What can we do? Well, it would be fantastic for us, and it would absolutely be very profitable for the labels to just conceive automatically by default an audiophile mastering. When you're doing a record, okay, do your darn master for your phone, for a boombox, for Spotify. But why not make also an extremely dynamic, high quality audiophile master? Maybe you could keep it there and use it after, because there are certain dynamics in the industry. I understand that. Mechanics that we don't know. But maybe you could release it afterwards. I'm sure you could release it at 2 or 3 times the price. We're so stupid that we're going to buy it. I'm sure, clearly we're not talking about normal pop stuff. Simple productions, okay? Basic productions. But if there are important artists, or simply a type of music that does have nuances, details, a thickness, I don't know, a quality that you would like and that you could enhance, why not do also a master? Do it digital, no problem. A digital, high quality, uncompressed master for us. Please listen to this. Do it. You're gonna make money, you label that you're watching this. Okay, the last, let's say, solution, or I would say more like a recommendation, a suggestion for those who can regulate this and the labels themselves. Remastering should only be used as a name and as a process only for new formats, because there are going to be new formats in the world in the future, I'm sure. In any case, if an album has never been released on that format, for example, a cassette, you're going to need a remaster. That's good. Absolutely. A new mastering for that format. Okay. So limit it to that, and only if there are clear, patent, obvious sonic upgrades. Otherwise, no. There should be almost a rule saying you cannot touch the master tape, you cannot touch the mix, you cannot touch anything, not even the digital files, to do this unless you have these benefits, these purposes. Because otherwise, it's only marketing. And you're trying also to take advantage of the copyright flaws of the earlier recordings, for example. So I really hope these small little solutions can be integrated in the production, in the manufacturing of records, because we are suffering, and I truly think that this is just not a topic, a random topic, and truly believe in this. And I truly hope that we're going to do something about it. Somebody's going to do something about it. We have to take action, because they are killing our precious and beloved music, our memories, our life. Thank you again for watching. And remember, music is born analog.
Well, guys, if you're enjoying my videos and you're enjoying my channel, please consider to subscribe by clicking the black and white logo here below. Also, don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll never miss an episode and you will become a true member of the analog community.